officially a Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. Let's go!
Broken, thankless, push you down, open.
John, thank you once again for joining me. I'm going to get these intros right out of the way because I am very excited for what is in store for everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is the Hoochie Daddy Ethan James. You can find me at Hoochie Daddy EJ on Instagram. This is on a Forklift Wrestling podcast, but more importantly, the gentleman sitting next to me on his computer, not actually at my house, is Pro Wrestling.
Or am I? No, I'm joking.
Everybody does podcasts from my house. It's happened.
We don't. Maybe for the King of the Kill tournament, we'll do like a in your house podcast or something. Who knows?
My basement is set up perfect for it because it looks like the classic quintessential 1970s basement with the brown paneling and the white perfect. Stucco walls and drop ceiling. Yeah, it's wonderful. But more importantly, you, sir, our pro wrestling Swiss Army knife, Mr. John Bullard of John Bullard Promotions. And to touch base on everything really quickly, you guys had a pretty big show over the weekend, or 2 weekends ago.
Yeah, we actually did a huge event for the Special Olympics of Chicago, working with the kids at the Special Rec. We had over 750 in attendance for that event. There were still more actually trying to come to the building, but unfortunately they got stuck in traffic because, of course, the event was booked by the venue owner and the wonderful people there during St. Patrick's Day weekend. Which anybody knows anything about Chicago, one of the biggest celebrations in Chicago is St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, and here in Detroit, they do it as well, but they actually do it the weekend before St. Patty's Day now, to just kind of cut down. So everybody, because there's a large migration of people that do go from here to Chicago to celebrate it. So instead of trying to compete, they give them 2 weekends of fun.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Congratulations on that. That's an absolutely fantastic thing. It's an absolutely wonderful cause. I had friends that wrestled in your event there, and they loved it. They cannot wait to come back. And they're friends of yours as well. But tonight we're here to talk about something we spoke last time about. And I'm not talking about the Johnny Rock story. That'll be for another night. But I'm talking about the art of promotion.
Of course.
And, sir, I am going to let you take it away. I will chime in when I feel necessary, but I'm excited for this because I feel like a student and I feel like I'm getting that one-on-one tutoring time. Even though this is going to be available for multiple people, this is, to me, this is something where, like I said, I'm going to take notes. I have a Google Docs sheet open right now, and I'm ready I'm going to jot some stuff down on it. But more importantly, I'm going to let you just kick it off, and I'll throw in title cards when necessary.
Of course. Well, first thing first, a little backstory how I became a promoter. The year was 2012, and I just came off from a wrestling injury in 2011 and didn't know if I was going to come back to the ring. So during that time period, I kind of tousled with the idea maybe I'll walk away from wrestling. Maybe I should try something else. And I look at the region that I was living in at the time in Kentucky, and there was no really true wrestling promotions in the area. The last couple of promotions I ran there, to be quite honest, and not trying to talk down on anyone, but they're what you would call literally an outlaw mud show type of promotion. Like, it wasn't good. Not that, they did hardcore wrestling or they did something you didn't like, but it was just so low budget and so bad. You ever seen bad wrestling?
It was like a yard show, for lack of a better term. What people would call the yard. You've seen the somebody's post is a log and there's twine wrapped around it. It's not a real almost to that level. But
the area just suffered from a lot of really bad wrestling and a lot of wrestlers that were not properly trained. So anytime you have that effect in your area, it will turn away a lot of wrestling fans. So a lot of people were kind of anti-wrestling. And this is kind of like a story of my life with the different areas I've lived in and promoted shows at. But the first two men that really took me under their wing as mentors, one was the legendary Kentucky promoter, Hall of Famer Terry England, who mainly runs out of Western Kentucky. He runs a promotion called UCW. They have been around since, I think, 1997, as long as Terry's been promoting. Terry was a wrestler himself from back in the 1980s. And Terry was one of the gentlemen that took me under his wing. And the funny thing was, it wasn't like wrestling schools would teach how to be a promoter. And a lot of promoters, definitely in that time era, were still very protective over their knowledge. But Terry was one of the guys that just poured his knowledge onto me. And still to this day, I'll still contact him about an idea or how to do certain things at times. And he would always give me guidance. And I've also helped him out recently on stuff too. So it's been kind of nice to pay it a little forward to a guy who's been nothing but a mentor to me. Another person is the legendary Tom Williams from the promotion called War out of Lima, Ohio. Tom and Terry both, I consider my mentors when it comes to being a promoter. And first show I ever promoted was in 2012. Now, for a lot of promoters, when you're first starting out, you will learn a lot by trial by fire. You will make mistakes. That's going to happen. Even to the best of us. Terry, and I definitely know Tom would tell you this as well, that every promoter learns from their mistakes. Sometimes you'll overbook a card. Sometimes you may have forgotten something that you should have remembered for your shows. And then you start learning the other key aspects that makes being a promoter and running a successful promotion a very large deal to a lot of us who are in this market. So the very first thing that I've learned over the years, customer service, it is the first impression. The first impression isn't just, oh, we're going to have pro wrestling here tonight. Your first impression needs to be the flyers. Have you ever seen, if you didn't have social media back then, the way that you gravitated your fans is by having professionally done flyers. You want a flyer that looks sharp. It looks good. It doesn't look like someone from MS Paint was just throwing something to the wind. And you still see some of those bad flyers where you can tell like they didn't want to hire a graphic designer. So they just tried it themselves. And there's like you'll still see like the person cut off and then there's nothing blurred or nothing like covering them. It's just really bad posters. Bad posters will scare off fans. And fans will also look at it and go, well, if they didn't take time to care about what their poster looks like, how bad is the wrestling? Little first impressions.
So speaking on the first impressions thing, and actually it resonates from that area. I have friends and family from the area of Western Kentucky. I also know some people that still wrestle kind of in that area. And that is an area that is known for having really bad wrestling posters, actually. It's that, which is strange because you do have a hotbed of wrestling down there with Ohio Valley Wrestling and a few other promotions that do, kind of elevate the things down there, but then still there's so much of the bad stuff. Do you think that seeing all of the bad has helped you as a promoter go, hey, now I definitely know that's not right. I still have to find the right way to do it, but I know what the wrong way is.
So one of the experiences I've learned as a promoter, dating back to the time I was working as a commentator, working as a wrestler, is when I spent time working for different promotions. And when you work for a good promoter, if you pay attention to what they're doing, you can learn a lot from that promoter. But you also can learn a lot from the bad promoters, and you'll learn what not to do. And one of my prime examples, the experience I had with the promoter who runs Southern Championship Wrestling when I was on WBZ TV9. Gentleman who ran that promotion did all the wrong things. He had television, and he found a way to drop the ball with that. He also had found a way to alienate his fans by lying to them and by not promising them what he was trying to give. A prime example, he had this event and talking about first impressions. He, on television, told everybody, Jerry the King Lawler will be at the Armory on, I forgot what it was, like August or September, one of the two. But Jerry Lawler was going to be there in person and had this big poster created with Jerry Lawler on it, because Jim White, who worked with us in the promotion, was Jerry Lawler's former tag team partner, 7-time former NWA Southern Tag Team champions. So they had a very close bond. It was Jim White who actually saved a life of Jerry Lawler when Lawler was very young in his 20s, when a wrestler actually took a razor blade and cut Lawler in a ring. So we all were happy. We're expecting this. And the night of the show, you had 450 people packed inside this armory that only holds 200, 250. So it's wall to wall. People were just piled up on top of each other, waiting all the way up to the main event. Problem was, Jerry Lawler was not there. And instead of going to the fans and saying, I do apologize, Jerry Lawler's not here tonight, we could either refund the tickets or you can sit here and enjoy the show. And when he comes back, we'll do a special deal for you guys, special meet and greet or whatever. Just have patience with us. He didn't do that. So forever, the main event comes in and he's stalling the crowd. And then his tag team partner comes out and the crowd went, yeah. And you just hear all the energy just get sucked out of the room. Middle of this match, I watched about 340 people walk out of the building. He lost all that crowd. Why? Integrity. So some of those fans, this was their very first show seeing Southern Championship Wrestling. So their first impression is they lied to us and they took our money.
It's hard to win fans over. It's even harder to win them back.
Exactly. Fans do not forget when they are burned. There's some that might forgive, but they don't forget. And for the first impression, outside of good posters, also the way that your website, if some wrestling companies have good websites, make sure your website is easy to navigate. Make sure it's something that, let's say you have a grandma or grandpa who maybe not be the most computer literate, but if your website is easy enough to navigate, maybe they know how to order those tickets. Or it's the wording and the letters is actually bold enough for someone who might actually have visual impairment to have the opportunity to actually read what they're looking at. Little things like that leaves a good and first impression on someone. On top of all of that, another thing that I try to do myself, my first impression, is I actually print up tickets that are customized with the logo, with the like a little miniature flyer on the ticket, or the wrestlers who's going to be on the show on the tickets. I actually cut those tickets myself by hand, personally, for every fan who bought tickets. I also personally write letters to every ticket buyer, personal letters, thanking them for their time, their money, and their effort to come out to our shows to see what we're about to do, give them the performance that we're hoping they'll bring them back. So instantly, when you do that, you're already giving them a great first impression. I remember all the years being involved in professional wrestling, I never received anything from a promotion when I ordered tickets. It was, okay, here's your ticket confirmation. They'll be at the door. Okay, cool. But imagine, But imagine you're that fan, and then the promoter, the owner of the company, calls you and say, by the way, I saw you order tickets. Thank you. And by the way, here's a personal letter sent to you with your tickets in the letter. And on top of that, there's like a sticker or a keychain or a little token of appreciation for your support. That's a hell of a good first impression.
Yes, it is. And it's a lost art on ticket stubs as well. You know, we think about, and I have to harken back to almost to my parents. I do have some ticket stubs. I am old enough to have a few of them. But that's a piece. That's something that you remember. That's something that you can look back on. I have friends that we were really good friends up to this point. We bonded over a movie. All three of us still have our ticket stub from the night that we went and saw that movie.
Of course.
And this is something that could change it. It could change a child's life. And between you and I understand this, that yes, it is nice to make adults fans, but once you make a child a fan, you make a fan for life.
Absolutely.
And that's such a huge, what you're talking about in the way of impressions. To me, I never got to see a show really as a kid, but like I saw Nitro, I saw the stuff on TV, and that was that. I have my WrestleMania ticket stub. I have my Saturday Night's Main Event ticket stub. I still have those. And you can't get that anymore from a big company, but you can get that from an independent promotion.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to do. When I first started promoting shows, I wanted the memory. And, you know, when I was a kid, I used to go to shows all the time. I grew up in Florida. So growing up in Florida, wrestling's everywhere, especially when you're a kid of the 90s. So I remember getting those ticket stubs and how cool it was when they would rip the stub and then hand you back your ticket. So you still have the keepsake of your ticket. And definitely if it's like has the company logo or just had the information on it, that's great. What we try to do for our tickets, we try to leave like the wrestler's photo on there or some type of cool graphic. So it's not just like, oh, here's something to throw away. It's like, keep that. That's a souvenir for you, you know? And especially what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to have it where the tickets has a print on the front, but on the back is actually an area where you actually get an autograph from that wrestler.
Beautiful. I love it. I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Just little things. And that's the thing about first impression. It's the little things. I still, to this day, when I run my events, when I know there's a special needs fan, will drive over to their house and personally hand them their tickets and give them a gift. Don't have to do it. The things I don't have to do that, but I want to do that because it leaves that impression on that family.
I think that is, it's an unheard of. So there's showmanship and there's things, and wrestling always kind of gets knocked for being a vaudeville act, and it really is. It is vaudeville at its core, and to just take those little steps, which I understand that they're time consuming, but they are small. The little things matter. We always talk about the little things matter. And in wrestling, they always tell you the techniques, no wasted motion. Why shouldn't that apply to the promoting of the event as well as the work in the ring?
Absolutely. It's the little things. This is the big part of my 7-lesson thing that I teach a lot of young promoters, and what I tried to at least do for struggling promoters is teach them that it's not rocket science what we're doing, but it's the way that you approach your customers, is the way you approach the public, the way you approach a potential sponsor in different things that you do. That really matters. That in itself is something that you will be, I know it, you wouldn't be shocked because you're a highly intelligent person. But you would be shocked by how many people don't want to take those little tiny steps. And they're not massive steps. They're not like running the New York Marathon. Just little tiny steps to create a moment that becomes a memory for life. One of the things I told the guys in the locker room at our show for the kids at the Special Olympics, I said, there's a motto to John Bullard Promotions. We create moments to give them memories.
And that's really what professional wrestling is. You're creating moments. In the hype of things, let's look at every big moment. Andre Hogan at Mania 3. It's a moment. Nobody really remembers the rest of the match, that Andre struggled his way through it, unless you're sycophants like us and you're just very into it. But if you ask the average person, there's moments. You remember The Rock, up on the corner. You remember Stone Cold hitting stunners, but you don't always remember the match. And this is a moment that it's not on TV. It's in person. It's very personal to everybody. You have a moment with a fan as a promoter, because that could mean just as much to them as it means to you. And I know that means a lot to you as well. And it might not to other people, but you have to look at it from the fan perspective. You have to look at it from the person that's buying the ticket, because without them, there's no show.
And what has helped me too, in the years that I've been doing this, I try to take myself out of the seat of always being the promoter. And I put myself in the seat of, what if I was a fan? And what would I want to see? Or how would I want this company to approach me? How would I respond to this? And that's a question I leave out for all the promoters and anybody who wants to be a promoter listening to this. Ask yourself that question before you even take $1 out of your pocket or whatever pocket you're getting your money from to run a show. You got to ask yourself that question. How do I approach my fans?
And I think that is the biggest thing of how you determine what your first impression will be. But this is not just a one-step process. This is a 7-step process.
There's 7 steps.
And that is just the first one. John, what is step number 2? How do we approach that from the first impression?
So the first impression, you got them to purchase the tickets, you got their interest. They are so excited to join you for your event, your extravaganza. Step 2 might be the strangest one that no one would ever think of, and it's the one that works for me, and it's a formula that I use for every event: the parking lot. Now you're probably saying to yourself, Ethan, a parking lot? Why? What's this about? Well,
I've put myself in the. I'm looking at this not as in the stance of somebody who's worked around shows, been in a ring, nothing like that. I'm looking at this as I want to buy a ticket to your show. Please walk me through it. That's where we're sitting. I'm in full fan perspective at this point.
So my entire approach is, now you got the handwritten letter. You've received a small gift. You received your tickets. And also on top of that, side of the letter, I also give people my contact information so they can personally call me or email me. But then show day comes and you're waiting in line, or the doors haven't opened up yet. What do? Myself and members of my roster will go outside and greet the fans personally and get to talk to them, get to know them, get to spend time with them a little bit, hype them up for the event, get them ready for it. Imagine this, and this is what we did 2 weeks ago. Myself, Toli Bertarelli, and a few of the guys. When the Special Olympian athletes were getting off the bus, they were greeted by us, waiting for them coming off the bus. Now, if you were a kid and somehow your bus took you to a wrestling show, the building automatically is a cool feeling, because you're like, oh, you get excited for the building, right? But imagine stepping out of the car, stepping off the bus, stepping no matter where you're going to, but you're there. And the larger than life personalities are there to greet you. Personally.
As a kid, I would have thought, I put myself in the perspective. Okay, so what happens if I step off a bus in DDP or the local version of that? That's who's greeting me as I come off the bus, and you just can't fathom it. And the best part is, it doesn't matter if they know who you are; they just know why you're there. And that's cool enough to them, because you took the time to appreciate them for their accomplishments, their accolades, them coming to your show.
Exactly. We made them the stars.
Yes.
And make them feel like that. But we also go out of our way to fist bump, high five, talk to our audience, talk to our crowd. One of the things I'm going to be starting to do for our upcoming season for shows, I'm actually going to have like special small grab bags of popcorn and a few things just to pass out from our sponsors and other people who are investing into our company. Little things to give out to the audience while they're waiting. And we also do some things too. Last show we did here in Michigan City, We have a fan who is a physically disabled fan. She had a hard time walking up the stairs. Unfortunately, the venue that we used at that time was not the best for handicap accessible. So what we did, we told her, put your arm around my shoulders, put your arm around Tully's shoulders, and we're going to walk you right up the stairs. So we walked this fan one step at a time and got them up the stairs and got them to their seat. One of the things that I also do for our fans as well, when it comes to that parking lot, I get to know them on their first name basis. I want to get to know people, not, oh, hey, that guy there, or, oh, that person with their kids. I want to get to know them. The Craig Hansons of the world who brings his wonderful daughter Alex to our shows. I want to get to know Daniel and his family, which I've gotten a privilege of becoming good friends with. I try to become friends with our fans, not just to make them come back for more, but I'm actually interested and invested in them too, because they're invested in us. So you develop that bond with your fans, you develop that friendship, that core, and then they become a family to you, and your show becomes their show because you gave them something that most wrestling shows don't do in return. So outside of that, another thing that we also do, outside of greeting our fans outside, having a good time with them, this season coming up, going to try and pass and throw around some cool free stuff to them. We might even do a big cookout during the summer. Hopefully we're going to try to land a 4th of July show and get a company to do a big barbecue cookout for all of our fans. Fireworks, wrestling, barbecue. It's a win-win situation for everybody.
Right.
But we also, and I do this personally myself, once we get the fans inside the building, I personally sit them in their seats by myself. I seat them for where they're at. And the thing is, I don't have to do that, but I choose to do that. It's the little things, once again, and everything I want to say over and over in my little lessons. May not sound like I'm creating a huge scientific experiment and blowing away the minds of others. But once you start seeing how you treat your fans, once you start going through this method, you'll start seeing results. And I personally will show each and every fan where their seat is located at, get to talk to them, get to know them, shake their hands. And once again, they didn't have my business card. By the time they leave, they have my business card in hand.
Would this be a situation where you hear the old phrase of you have to spend money to make money, and money in this sense is not a fiscal currency, but money in this sense would be you have to take the time and show them that you're making time for them as well. It's almost the same scenario, just with a different form of currency, and the currency in this is your time.
No, absolutely it is. You're to be a successful promoter, you have to be 100% invested in what you're doing. To be successful, you cannot run this as a small-time hobby. And I know there's some promoters that have fun with wrestling. They treat it like a hobby, and that's okay. But I'm talking about for those of us who actually try to make a living with it, or we make profit, but we also try to give back to our communities. You have to be invested. You have to be invested in what you're doing, but you also, and then I know Tom will definitely say this, and I know Terry England would too, you would also have to invest in your community and the fundraisers and the different things that wrestling shows do properly. The most successful promoters in the independent wrestling scene for years have gotten involved with their schools, with their charities, the groups that need help. You're the
I know there's there's a promoter up here that does that as well. And I don't know him personally, but he runs IPW or IWR, sorry, out of Grand Rapids area, the Kalamazoo area, and he does a lot of benefit shows at schools and stuff. And sometimes I know that that's a thing that has to be taken into it, whether you're doing a benefit show or there's a reason that something's going on at the location. And it could be as simple as that's the place that you're able to book it at. And I don't think a lot of people understand that if you have the opportunity and you can book a school gym or something like that, sure, you're not going to have your booze and your things like that. But if you're inviting a very friendly or a family friendly atmosphere, a local school is an absolutely wonderful place to hold something, because then it's like, especially if there's kids that come to it that are at the school. And they get to go, yeah, we got to see, this person got body slammed. Or, it's a great time to get members of the community involved. You have the teachers, the coaches, principal, somebody like that. Even if they get on a mic and they call commentary for a match, and maybe they don't know what they're doing, but that's the best part about it. Especially for the kids, they get to see somebody who they look up to, but put into a kind of like an fish out of water experience. For me, that's something I enjoy seeing, as like I would take my daughter to a show like that.
Those are my favorite wrestling shows to actually be involved in and to promote, because you could do so much with fundraiser shows. I love when you get a football coach that's good enough and still athletic enough where you could use him as a special enforcer for a match. Referee goes down, heel gets a chair, the heel's about to do something, the football coach spears him. The baby face gets to win. 1, 2, 3. The crowd, it is a science. It works. By the time that 3 count hits, that crowd just explodes. Always. That is a formula that has never failed. I've seen that done ever since 1994 when I first saw my very first fundraiser show, and it was the same exact thing, same exact result. Crowd exploded. The last time I saw a show that did that, the crowd exploded. Why? If you have a good enough heel that knows how to perform in front of that crowd, knows how to get that crowd riled up, does a smart thing, doesn't have to get cheapy, just work smart. And then the coach does their job in return, or the teacher or faculty member, whoever it is. When it's done right, it works.
So you were talking about yourself and Tully assisting a fan into the building. Well, and then you were talking about, and then you were talking about, personally seating the fans. Now, I know some promotions like to play music, and I think that takes us to step 3 in the process.
Yes, the music, and part of the presentation package. Now we're entering into the world of presentations. And music and concessions. This is kind of a 2-parter put together. The music, it really depends. The first thing I'd tell promoters when they first start running shows, pay attention to your crowd. Look at your audience. If you're thinking your crowd is going to be into screamo, death metal music or heavy metal music, and you find out that there is a very family-friendly Sunday afternoon type show, probably not going to fly. But if you have music that's still awesome, still a good beat, and you'd be surprised as much as, and this is coming from a guy who's a metalhead. As a kid growing up, like, dude, I grew up on Black Sabbath and all that stuff. So, like, I'm a rock and roll guy. But I also know from over the years of experience that paying attention to the crowd are there a lot of children in the crowd with grandma and grandpa, or is this more of an adult crowd? Okay, it's more of an adult crowd, then okay. Let's use I got 3 different playlists. I got playlist A, playlist B, playlist C. A is for that adult crowd. Now, if I know I want to do, like, say, the Chaotic Combat show, then I know, like, okay, this is going to be more of the heavy metal, underground hip hop type crowd.
Yeah, you get away with playing a little Code Orange or something like that at one of those shows. You're fine.
Exactly.
But...
Now, Plan B is more of the mixture of, okay, you got some arena rock, good hard rock music, but nothing like too edgy. But you also got the more popular stuff that's going on, some classics. And then your step C is more of like, okay, this is as clean and cut whistle as it gets. Like, I ain't gonna worry about no one getting offended. If they do, they have like the darkest soul in the world.
We have a sound guy here, and his instant go-to for like, hey, I need to play something clean, is he just puts anything by Journey on, and he's like, I think we'll be okay. But it does.
I can hate Journey. Like, I don't care I know everybody who loves Journey, but
yeah,
if you get music that people like to sing to, so the Special Olympics show wasn't just the athletes; their families were there, teachers were there, faculty members were there. So like, there were other people who were not just the athletes, and we were playing soundtracks that people were singing along to. We had people dancing, like people were having a good time. And I learned this aspect from going to major league ball games, sports games, and seeing like, okay, what are they playing? And you see like how the crowd would dance or get up and move around. You're like, this works. Prime example, one of the biggest inspirations to what I do is the baseball team, the Savannah Bananas. And you go to their game, what they do is how I try to present professional wrestling. Like, you're here for a show, we're here to give you the show. And we're here to give you a fan interactive show. But music is a big part of it. You know, the entrance music is great. You got to set that tone for your characters. But also the show, I always hate when you go to a show and for some reason, no one's not playing music. So you hear the crowd talking and you hear the boys in the back. It's like the last thing you want the crowd to hear. Mm-hmm. So you want to have good music. You want to have something that's energetic. You don't want to have something that just drowns the crowd out and kills the crowd. As much as I actually do like some country music, when I hear some of these DJs play it nothing but country, it kills my mood for wrestling. I look at that like, man, there's not, I'm good. Like, I'm going to fall asleep over here. Nothing against country music, but it does that to me. That's a huge step, man. Music is so important. To me, the other important process is good concessions. Quick concessions, but good food. Now, when I was running in Kentucky, I was very blessed to have Dairy Queen as a sponsor. So we had the barbecue pulled pork sandwiches. We had the dilly bars. Mm-hmm. And my God, during the summertime, that ice cream sold like hotcakes because it's hot. Even though our building had AC, but still all that body heat, people were wanting their ice cream. People love ice cream. I love ice cream. Do you like ice cream, Ethan?
No, I absolutely love ice cream.
Everybody loves ice cream.
I'm a little upset. I went to the store earlier and I didn't get any, and now I did have a milkshake on the way home, though. That's probably bad. I should probably stop that. But regardless, everybody loves ice cream.
Nothing wrong with a milkshake, but I also want to kind of give a little knowledge step to this to help out wrestlers and wrestling promoters on this. Let's say you're wanting to get, let's say, a box of pizza, or you want to work with a local pizzeria chain. One of the things that I have done over the years is I would actually print out a flyer that would be a half and half. Half my flyer would be our show with a little ticket stub that you can actually cut out and bring to the event. The other half of the flyer is for the pizzeria chain that you're partnering with, and it has their coupons on it. Little things like that, you do that in return with the pizzerias. They love that. What do? They slap that flyer on every single box going out.
We're very lucky here that we have a pizzeria that does that as well. They actually will come to the events. They have a nice catering setup where they bring an oven.
Lanes?
Yeah,
Lanes
yes.
is awesome. Lanes is amazing.
Yes.
Lanes. Yes, I haven't done business with Lanes, but Ruthless Pro Wrestling, where I do commentary work, is sponsored by Lanes at a lot of events. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Lanes is amazing. The customer service is great. The piece is good. And they're huge supporters of pro wrestling.
So also when you're doing this, the music, the concessions, obviously we know sometimes there's limitations based upon the building that you're in as to what you can, do. Some places have their own concessions. If you're working out of say a municipal arena or something that has a grill in it, it's kind of a benefit because at least you're not going to have to worry about covering the concessions because it's there as part of the building. However, it's one of those things where if you have the option, would you recommend people search very hard for somebody that's going to be as beneficial for you as you could be for them? Build that. This is part of building that connection with the community, is that people, if you have that connection built with them, or if you're working towards it, it's going to be super beneficial to get somebody like a Lane's Pizza.
Yes, that's very beneficial. A big part of landing a sponsorship with some of these companies, local restaurants, may not be money. But in return, let's say you advertise them. And when I was in Kentucky, I had a pizzeria chain I also worked with. And what they would do was they gave me $5 off each box. So I got like a killer deal on pizza.
Oh, yeah, that's
just by
great.
that alone. So they were like, hey, this is $5. It's literally a $5 box of pizza. And you turn around and sell it for $2 a slice. 8 slices. You do the mathematics. You make a lot of money off of that when you would sell your pieces. And sometimes you get a fan that buys the entire box right then and there. Like, I'll just buy the entire box. Okay, cool. You know, so
right.
for 10. And it's not like being shady by doing that. That's just smart business. It's mathematics. It's economics. But what I would always tell people is take care of your restaurants that are wanting to work with you. Advertise them. Put their banners up at ringside. Make sure your ring announcer is putting them over with every match or every other match at least. Make sure that fans are enjoying their time. And let's say that, and what I would do sometimes too, is say there's a certain kitchen. Let's say I didn't want to deal with concessions that night, which I usually was a concessions guy, but I would also will sell my concessions to the restaurant that was working for me, coming in and as a partner. And they would pay me a certain amount of fees up front, and they would make their money 10 times over by selling concessions. And that was their job. They would bring in whatever food particles or food items that they need and sell it. But really good food. Now, the wrestling's really good. The presentation's already there. You already made them feel at home. The music's pretty good too. Rocking. Everyone is having a great time. You have some, you already went to the concessions. You're getting your first taste, and the food's amazing. Instantly, you cannot tell me as a fan, you're already feeling like, wow, this is like the greatest place on earth. This company has already rolled out the red carpet to me, make me feel like I'm special, which everyone should treat their fans like that. But all the other stuff is great. And now the food's amazing on top of that. We're not even got near the wrestling part. We didn't get to the dimming of the lights, special spotlights. We're stacking each other. Every little level I'm giving you guys listening to this now, it stacks up on top of each other to create the ultimate fan experience.
But where does that fan experience take place at?
Well, it takes place in what I like to call the auditorium. Now, there are different venues across the United States, and over the years I have ran events in civic centers and armories. I ran it inside ginormous high school gyms, and I even had the privilege of running events at big arenas. I can tell you that your auditorium, the way it's set up, the way you approach it, and also your selection choice is very important to your fan. The worst thing you can do to a fan is find a building to run in the middle of nowhere that no one can find or is hidden to the point where you're like, okay, where's this at? Ethan, you've been in wrestling for a long time. I don't know if you ever had those experiences. I have over the years been given the address by a promoter, and I went for a loop trying to find this building and couldn't find it because it was like the middle of a cornfield.
Well, and on top of that, it's not even just finding the building. Sometimes you find the building and there's nowhere to park. I mean, I know we've run into that situation before. We used to run out of a small karaoke bar here, and while the bar was great, the food was great, the owners were very, pleasant with everything, until the Mickey Shore next door closed for the day. There was no parking, and they let you park there after hours, but they still had a business to run. And it was a scenario like that where it's like, hey, that's really cool that we're here, but after you put 25 people on the card, there's no room for anybody else to park because we all live local. So we all drove instead of carpooling, like it's a farther, show farther away. And it became a difficult thing. So I think this is a scenario where location comes into effect. And it's not necessarily the physical location, but it's what's around it. How are the amenities of said auditorium?
And that's a very important thing. One of the things I also looked at, and from the previous experience with the fan who was physically disabled, was there was no ramp. There was nothing for them to go up the stairs or find a way up. So we, manpowered. The big reasons now that I'm running the venues I'm at now is that it's actually handicap accessible. It's to give our fans who may not be physically able to go upstairs, don't worry. You don't have to worry about stairs no more. We got you taken care of. Little things like that goes a mile for certain fans. Also, the accessibility of finding the venue and having a big parking lot is a huge help. Now, I know that not every show, not every promoter is going to have that luck. Trust me, I've been in that position myself. I know what it's like to run an event, and then I had to park like 3-4 blocks away to walk to the event. It's not fun. It's really not. So when you try to find your venue, for the first time promoters listening, writing down the things I'm giving you attention on, be very selective and work on the venue that you want to give your fans the best experience possible. Now, once you go inside, one of the things I feel like it's also part of that fan experience and also make them feel like they're really at a huge event is a presentation of the auditorium. When I did work for TNA Impact, they ran the event at Cicero Stadium, which is an older building in Chicago, but it's a huge auditorium. And the way that Impact Wrestling took what would look like a giant high school gym and made it into an arena, instantly for me working there, made me feel special being there. The way that they would dim the lights and they would have the spotlights over the ring, the laser effects, the Tron screen, just little things that you can do. Now, if you don't have that budget, that's okay. There's guys like Tom Williams with what he does with the ring curtains, the banners, the ring aprons, all customized. That also is part of the presentation of your auditorium. Once you see a company that looks really professional, it sets a difference from the guy who is running out of his garage compared to this feels like something that should be on television. A company who does a great example of that in Chicago is a promotion I actually do work for called Squared Circle Megastars. Will and Eddie Ramirez do a fantastic job, not only having great professional wrestlers, their flyers look great, but also the presentation. They have the lights, the smoke, the fog machines. They have everything that you'd want for like an arena show. And for the fans that go there, for the first time fans, and I've seen this myself, when they walk into the Berwyn Eagles Club and they see all this custom banners, they see the custom aprons, they see all the cool stuff, they see the moving laser lights and beams, and all that there brings presentation. And you could actually buy those items on Amazon.com. The thing about Amazon, you can literally get anything on Amazon. You can get laser lights, beams, canisters. You get all that stuff for a decent price. It's not actually going to break your bank. Or you go to a local music store, a guitar center, any of those places, and you can actually work out a deal or even rent those items if need be. So there's different ways you can build presentation to your shows if that's what you're going for. To me, though, I always felt when I was running shows in Kentucky that all the other promotions that ran in the area never use canisters, lights, did not use any of the beams. It was just pretty much like, here's a curtain and here's wrestling. I actually wanted to give the people that rock and roll experience when you go to a rock concert, when you go to a really good rock concert. Ethan, you're a concert guy. When you go to those cool big time concerts and you see the laser shows and then the music hits and all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, like
everything syncs up.
We're in for a good night.
So I never got to see their actual shows, but I know a location that no longer is with us, Cody Hawk School, Future Great. They had the laser light shows and the smoke stuff, and that's where like Jack Vaughn, who I know a lot of people have seen on TikTok, would film a lot of his his videos at Future Great. They did that, and if you ever saw the building that they were in, it was not a big building, but they made it feel larger than life because of the presentation.
You know, even prime example of talking about making a building look larger than life, the ECW arena. There's a bingo hall. It was a rundown bingo hall in South Philadelphia. But because of the aura and the presentation that they presented on television, it made anybody who was a wrestling fan want to go there. Hell, this WrestleMania weekend, I actually plan to do a voyage to ECW Arena just because it's one of the meccas of wrestling. I just want to visit the building. Now, I know the building looks totally different from what it did from the 90s, but it's that presentation that made me fall in love with it.
Well, before we're even talking here, TNA Impact has set up inside of the 2300 arena, and they've made it look fantastic, for a lack of a better word.
It's amazing what blackout curtains can really do for a building. You know, for promoters listening to this, invest your time. Once you get some money here and there, invest your time in purchasing blackout curtains, because you could take a building that has wood paneling walls, and nothing wrong with it, because I love me some good wood paneling. It's got a little vintage vibe to it, but you can cover that wood paneling walls with that blackout curtains, and next thing you know, now your building has a different look to it. And then you got little lights. Now the lights will play off those curtains. And instantly it gives a different aura, different presentation. Like you said about Future Great Wrestling. Prime example, like you said, a building that was not flashy, was not fancy, kind of ran down, but the way it was set up, the presentation of the building, gave those fans the feeling that they were there to see professional wrestling. Not wrestling, but professional wrestling.
I just thought of somebody, and I know this is in the middle of a seminar thing that we're doing here, but I just thought of somebody who owns a building that would be great for wrestling, and I'm going to keep that in the back of my head for a later time. It'd be great for a family-friendly thing. They don't have any kind of licenses for any other things, but they do events there anyway, but different ones. Now, when you're in the auditorium, we're talking about the presentation of everything. There's a centerpiece. There's a focal point to all of this.
The most important focal point of all. The ring. A good-looking wrestling ring is the thing that grabs people's attention the most. Have you ever seen a wrestling show where the ring aprons are saggy? And you literally tell, like, the canvas is covered in stains. You can tell, like, whoever owned that ring never washed the canvas, or they never took care of their personal belongings. That looks horrible. Now, I understand sometimes it happens. Someone might bleed. Something like that will happen on occasions. But take care of your canvas. The aprons, if you go on to, and I'll say this again about Tom Williams, but Tom Williams has a video on Facebook. And Tom will send this to promoters who ask this question. He actually will teach you how to properly adjust your ring aprons to where they never sag. And it's a simple metal wire that he uses. It's like a dog wire or something they use for like kennel cages. He wraps that around and then fastens it to the ring. And those ring aprons never sag. So, and it looks so polished.
Tom is a perfect example of a presentation standpoint. If anybody
he's a master of presentation when it comes to wrestling. Really,
if you guys get a chance, go check out War Wrestling. Or Thomas Williams on Facebook. You'll see it, the logo, the War logo. Absolutely fantastic presentation at all of his events. I haven't been at one, but he posts pictures constantly, and it's something that I see that and I go, that plus the price, plus I know he's got good food there, I'm going. If I was local enough to it.
And to give Tom credit as well, he always books top-notch professional wrestlers. Always top quality. But the ring is and this might be one of the shortest pieces of this topic and subject. But your ring and the presentation that you present to the audience of your ring is highly important. Make sure that your aprons are not sagging. Make sure that the canvas is clean. If you can, I know coming up pretty soon, there's going to be some production work being done for a lot of local and regional independent wrestling promotions where their logos will be printed on canvas. So now you get the giant canvas with your logo on it, which is when you see that is like the coolest thing in the world, because you see that and like, wow, that looks really professional. Remember that key word, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, professional. What we are professionals, and what we need to do is be professional. And when you're a promoter, that should be one of your main focuses is my product professional? Is it so good that people want to come and see it? And your ring is one of the biggest investments. Also make sure that you use the proper setup. when you see a ring not properly set up, it's very dangerous for talent. I don't know how many times I've seen boards slip out. I've seen people actually, if they didn't have enough padding in the ring, the injuries that comes from it as well. The ring's already dangerous enough with padding.
Mm-hmm.
Lord knows when someone's cheap and are not using the proper padding on a ring, the injuries that comes with that. There's all these little things.
Not to turn this into a Thomas Williams like thing, but he also sells ring padding, guys. So like, if you want good ring padding, it's also a great know your resources. Yeah, exactly. Know your resources, though. There's resources out there. If you're an independent wrestling promoter, and you own your ring, and you have the grace of doing that, go out of your way to get good stuff. I know up front it's going to hurt, but it's going to hurt the pocketbook in the long run. But in the short term, but in the long run, your talent is going to be super happy with you and a great presentation. I'll even give him a local guy up here a nod for this. Rob from Chaos. He's a promoter for Chaos. He has custom printed ring aprons. He's got he has the banners for everything. He has the curtains. He does posters for every show, not just the little guys, but the big ones like that. I'll give him the props that he deserves on that. When it came to branding, if you go to a Chaos show, it's a Chaos show.
Rob is professional. Rob's one of the guys that, I could give a list once this podcast is aired. Someone's like, can you give me a list of examples of professional promoters outside yourself? There is a great group of professional promoters, and Rob, he's very young to the game. He's still a newbie to the world of wrestling as a promoter, but I'll say this. He's watched, listened, and observed the guys who've done very well for themselves. And so far, he's done a good job from what I've seen.
I agree. The presentation-wise, he's done a fantastic job on that. But that's the ring. The ring is the focal point. Now, we got to talk about what takes place in the ring.
Well, that comes down to the performance. Now, as someone who has been a booker and promoter, I actually try to formulate and structure my shows where, by listening to the crowd, by talking to them, that you want to make sure, how do you open your show? Do you go into a talking segment that goes 30 minutes? And I've seen a lot of promotions do this. They want to go out there and they want to be WWE. They want to go out there and have the guy be like the Triple H from the 2000s and comes out there and cuts a 30-minute promo. Let me tell you something. If you're a wrestler that you're trusting with the mic, if he doesn't get my attention in 2 minutes, I'm going to fall asleep. The very first thing I do for my shows is that I give them a red hot opener. The way we need to look at the performance of professional wrestling is crowd interaction, which we do at John Bullard Promotions. We try to make sure that, let's say, for example, before we ring the bell, we will select a fan from the audience to come out there and be the bell ringer. Or we'll have a special guest ring announcer. Little things get the fans involved. But the show structure, we always go out there and give them a red-hot opener to get them excited. A match that's fast, a match that gets really good and quick, and gets people excited for the night of action. Your opening match is just as important as your main event. You got to look at professional wrestling as you would a fireworks show. Now, I know people are going to look at me and go, what do you mean by a fireworks show? You go watch a good 4th of July presentation. The very first firework. Boom. That's it. Just boom.
But it's one
big
the next
one. But it's a big one that grabs your attention. Then the next one. Boom, boom. Third one. Boom, boom, boom. And just watch how that works. Fireworks, every fireworks show does this when it's done properly. Gets your attention. Builds up to that attention. And keeps going until you get to the main event. Now, all those fireworks, a little extra, but it does give you everything. Why? That's the main event's job. The main event is now there to give you the extravaganza. But why? It's the main event. It's supposed to be the extravaganza. It's supposed to be the big blow-off to the feud or the big build-up that will turn into a blow-off down the road. But you want to give them the fireworks. Properly structured show with structure is to build them up and keep building it, bring them back down just a little, to give them all the way back up and then push them off. Because you give them enough for them to want to come back for more, but you don't throw everything into one giant bag and be like, oh, well, that's it. Well, what's the, and the question I ask guys all the time. Okay, you went out there and you give them everything that you know. What are you going to do next show? I'm not saying cheat the fans, by no means. But you got to give them something to come back for. And a good, proper show, you build them up and you make them hunger for it. And you want to bring them back and keep doing it over and over again, because like a good magician, like a good, even bands will do this. You give them enough until they start begging you for an encore, or they want to come back to see the show again. And then the next show, you give them a different playlist, or you give them a different magic act. Copperfield, yeah, I used to go to Vegas once in a while for magic. David Copperfield never really did the same tricks over and over again. Every show Copperfield did something a little extra, a little different. Why? Because he knows there's a lot of repeat customers that goes to his shows. So, you see me do this trick 5 times in a row. By the time the 5th time that's being done, is it really exciting to you anymore? You already seen it.
It's really not. I do have a question on that then.
Of course.
How so when you're sitting down to structure a show,
of course.
Is it really dependent on the talent that's on the card, or do you have like a formula that you like to go? Because me personally, I love when I get to a show and the first match is a tag match. Not always a scramble, not always the big one, but I always like a hot tag. And there's a couple of guys that the Bruisers. To me, they are almost the quintessential openers to a show. Because if you need somebody to get somebody into a crowd, send those guys out there. Because could they fit anywhere on the card? Yes, they could. But man, the motions and the almost bushwhacker-esque like kind of personalities that they bring out there, you're getting the Leonard Skinnards playing, like people are getting a little excited to that. And to me, I love tag team. Like if I was to book a show, I would open it with the tag match. That's where I sit.
Yeah, there's a formula for all that. I mean, you could have a great tag team opener, or you could have a really good one-on-one match that, 2 guys work so well together, or girls work so well together, that they're going to blow the roof off. But probably pulling back the curtain, since this is a pro wrestling podcast, I have a list of things I tell guys and girls when they come work for me of what I expect for each match. And the first one is, in the opener, get them excited enough that they're ready for the show. But don't go out there and try to do everything that everyone else is doing. Mm-hmm. I also ask everyone, what are your finishers? Why? I make sure that no one doesn't copy the other guy's move. Now, some people get upset with this. Modern day wrestlers sometimes don't like hearing of that. But I tell you this. When I ran the Chicagoland Championship Wrestling shows, there was only one man on the card that threw the super kick. That was our heavyweight champion, Shogun Chris Logan. The Shogun, when he threw the super kick, it was lights out. No one even kick out of it. It wasn't the Young Bucks doing 1,000 super kicks or as a joke, whatever. But here's the thing. The entire show, not one super kick. Not even from the junior heavyweights. Not one. But when he did it, the crowd exploded, because finally the super kick is seen. If you properly structure your shows where certain moves are done at certain times, or, for example, I actually tell guys sometimes, don't throw a chop until the 3rd match. 3rd or 4th match, because when the chop finally hits, wakes up that crowd.
It goes back to creating memories, creating moments. This is a situation where they do that. Not everybody's gonna. You didn't look in '98 and Austin's in the main event of something. There was no stunner on the card until Austin hit it, because you're waiting for that moment. You're sitting there and you're juiced and you're like, when's he gonna get it? And you don't think, and then all of a sudden, boom, get boot to the gut, bah, and place goes nuts.
The super kick and the ace crushers or diamond cutters or the numerous other RKOs, whatever anybody would call the move. When Shawn Michaels hit that super kick, the crowd always popped. Why? They knew it was a finisher. They knew when Shawn hit you with that, it was lights out. Or if you did kick out of it, it was a big moment that you kicked out of the super
huge
kick.
deal.
So to me, as a promoter and booker, I try to structure my shows when every match has a moment. Every match, there's something about it that's a little bit more unique compared to the other match. And everyone has a little unique, for example, Special Rec show that we just got done doing. My opener was a 4-corner match. It was a 4-way. Lord captures the Fancy Raccoon, the Fancy Lad, versus Mexico and Septico, or luchadors. All of them are phenomenal luchadors, against a big, strong guy named Hans Carden. Hans Carden's like this region's Claudio Castagnoli. Like, Hans is like the real deal. All those guys are freaking phenomenal. But that was the only match on the entire show that had lucha libre and high flying. That was what made that special for the luchadors, is that this is their specialty. You're going to see this, then you're going to see this really big, strong guy toss them around like rag dolls, and they have to catch them off with their speed. But it was a moment, because when they finally got him, the crowd was there. The crowd was there for that moment.
Yeah, and that's the way that you got to do it, especially because having looked at things like that and how you've structured your show, you had a little bit of everything for everyone, which is kind of, I guess GCW does that now as well. If you want to look at a bigger promotion, they have a little bit of it. Yeah, and they've got a little bit. ECW did it back in the day. There's a lot of really good, and maybe it's just me, but like Mike Awesome was a guy who had, he could go out and put on just a really good wrestling match and didn't have to have the other hardcore aspect of it. But man, when he put somebody through a table, that was real fun. Like,
when him and Masato Tanaka would wrestle, that was a spectacle. That was like the closest thing to a gladiator fight between two guys that threw no caution to the wind, and they went to war.
And we have that a little bit, not to get on the actual wrestling thing on a wrestling podcast. We have a little bit of that with Gunther and when he faces Ilya Dragunov. I feel like those two are two that go at Sheamus and Drew McIntyre when they would have their battles as well. Another two guys, definitely not on the level of Tanaka and Mike Awesome, but they are also like very comfortable with each other, and they're just like we're gonna hit each other. It's just how
gentleman's agreement is a gentleman's agreement. Don't break my orbital bone or knock out my teeth, but the rest is open. And let's just slug it out.
Yeah, let's just go on it. And so performances like that, but they don't always. A performance isn't limited to just the moves and the matches in the show. Performances are also the promos when somebody has a mic in their hand. So it structure-wise, I guess not even structure-wise, but when's the right time to put a mic in somebody's hand?
When someone can actually talk. When you know that you can trust that person to actually speak. And that person knows your formula of your show. So they're not going to go out there and try to get themselves over and bury the company by, let's say, a family-friendly show. And then you got someone come out there and they drop the F-bomb. Wow. That's angered all the families and kids and parents and all that stuff. Or you get someone that goes out there and they think that they're a great talker, and then 30 seconds in, they're stumbling over words. To me, when I put a mic in someone's hand, that's someone like Paragon. That's my talker. I mean, I never have to worry about him. That's one guy I'm like, I don't have to tell him what to say. I was like, hey, here's the mic. Go out there and slay it. And he slays it. There's certain wordsmiths that are in our industry that deserves the mic time. There's other guys. There's a reason why we have things called managers and why people should use them. It's not a knock on the talent who can't talk. I think every wrestler, and I'll give this as a little critique off the subject, what I'm doing, but I feel like every morning when you're there to brush your teeth, cut a promo. That toothbrush is now your microphone. Cut a promo for it. 30 seconds. Knock it out. If you can take a minute out of your day to post on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, or what it's called now, and Facebook, you could also take 30 seconds to a minute out of your time to record a promo. Now, you don't have to always post your promo, but you do it for practice, and you get enough practice with it where you feel comfortable talking. There's a lot of guys that could actually be great talkers. There's some who's got amazing voices. But so many of them, though, don't practice at it. If you're going to be a good talker, you either practice really good or you just have it. Or, sadly, you don't. And that's okay. If you're a great wrestler, your wrestling will now cover the weakness of not being a great talker. Dean Malenko, prime example of that. Dean could talk, but was he ultra charismatic on the mic? No. But we knew when the wrestling was starting with him, you were in for something magical. Because Dean was a wrestler's wrestler.
Lance Storm is one of those guys too, even though now in his later years, you're like, you could talk. Why didn't you talk? And it was more of like, I didn't want to type thing with him. And I look at that and I want to say this, and I'm not a person to critique anybody, but to piggyback off of what John said, if you feel like you're not a good enough talker, reach out to people that do promos. Find a manager. It's not a point of weakness. A good manager can take a good wrestler and make them great. And that wrestler, in turn, can make that manager a better person. And this is all part of the performance aspect. They can make them a better manager. Look at how many people that probably wouldn't have gotten where they got to if it wasn't for Bobby Heenan or Jimmy Hart or Jim Cornette.
Prime example of this, not trying to cut you off, Ethan, but prime example of which just got insane. Ravishing Rick Rude was one of the best talkers in the business. But you put Bobby Heenan with Rick Rude or Bobby Heenan with Mr. Perfect, it was magic because both guys can talk, but both guys actually helped each other out when, let's say they couldn't, get something across. Heenan was so quick-witted that he made every little promo magical.
Lanny Poffo is another one who was very like, and when you're listening to him talk,
very intelligent,
and you're like, you probably would have been better off being a manager instead of a wrestler. And it's not to knock on your wrestling skills, but you were just that good at talking. But that's part of the performance, being on the mic, being able to get the crowd. I feel like that is not as important as the story told in the ring. And I don't mean moves. I mean the whole encapsulation of everything that's told in the ring, the facial expressions, the body positioning, how everything is done. Because moves are just a minute subset of what wrestling actually is to the whole story. Like, if you could do the move, that's cool, but how does it fit in?
You know what's the most perfect example of how a wrestling show could be booked and is exciting is when you go see a really well-ran professional circus. Now, I know, sounds weird, right? But think about it.
No, it makes sense.
The circus has everything for you. Every act is never the same. Every act is a little different from the other act. You start out with the human cannonball, trapeze artist, lion tamer. They probably don't allow lions now, but you know what I'm saying? There's just little things. Every act builds into the main extravaganza, the final act.
Cirque du Soleil, if you will.
Prime example of that. There's a circus that goes all around here in the United States. It's from Mexico. It's a Mexican family-owned circus. But I took my wife to it. And we were sitting there, and I was entertained more by that than I actually was by some local wrestling shows. And that's not a knock on the local wrestling shows, but the circus grabbed me as a former performer and as a promoter. It made me realize even more like they get the big picture. They understand the formula of what makes professional wrestling great when it's done right. And how I structure my matches is a circus performance. Guys, act one, you go out there and you do that. Act two, you go do this, build this up, get this over here, you do this. And by the time you're done and everyone's well structured, and I'm very picky on who I hire for my events because I want to make sure they're team players. So again, they listen, can they take directions? Are they coachable? Another thing promoters have to look at. Don't just hire anyone who's willing to go take a $20 payday. Some of the people who work dirt cheap usually are not the best talents. And 95% of the time, they don't care about your product. They just want some place to work. When you find a professional who actually cares about your product, now you have someone that's a team leader, a team player, someone who's willing to go the extra distance. It's a big reason why you saw guys like Ace Evans, why you see people like Tully on my shows, the Bruisers on my shows, Birdo, 100 other guys. Why? Because they're professional. and they understand the big concept of where it's not just professional wrestling, it's this experience that we're giving these fans.
It's a jigsaw puzzle. Everything has a piece. Whether you're a cog in the machine or you're a different little piece of cardboard sitting on a table, everything has its piece. And all of those pieces will end in something.
Yes. And that ending is the final impression, the last impression. Now, your last impression is after the event's over with. You give your fans an hour and a half, 2 hour show. Some wrestling promotions, 4 hours. But I try to run my events an hour and a half to 2 hours at best. Why? I have took a survey with fans. And I asked fans, what is your favorite time length for a wrestling show? And I've had multiple fans say, an hour and a half to 2 hours is as long as I really want to sit down in the seat and watch something, especially if they're like metal seats. Those things are a pain in the butt. So what I try to do is on the shows I do John Bullard promotions with special bot events, paid events, I try to give people 5 matches, 5 really good, entertaining matches that are different. No intermission. We go in 1 hour, 30 minutes. Our show with our backstage agent, Josh Patterson, working with me, we timed from the curtain to curtain every match, and everyone got it correct. And our show ended 1 hour, 30 minutes on the spot. And the fans were still excited. They were still energized. They were good to go. They were happy. But before they could leave, before we allow that to happen, we gave them the meet and greet. We make sure that their final impression afterward is, now you came and see us, you watch us perform, you watch what we do for you. Now, every one of the wrestlers is coming out to meet you guys, take all the photos you want, buy the merchandise you want, get your pictures done, buy pictures and get it signed. Whatever you need, this is what this meet and greets are for. Why? It's not 2 hours. You ever seen a show when it's like, by the time intermission's done for a long show, fans aren't really in trying to buy merchandise for most of these events. They're just like, man, I just want to go home. And I've seen some shows that ran so long that I actually saw fans leave the event before the main event because they were so burned out. They love wrestling, but they were also so tired from sitting there for 2.5, 3, 4 hours. They're wanting to be entertained. They want this event to be an hour and a half to 2 hours at best. And then when you still have all that energy, hey, you have the chance to meet your favorite guy. Your kid want to meet your favorite wrestler? Yeah. Well, come over here. Let's take a photo together. One of the things I'm actually working on is getting a photo print machine, or while we take your photo of that wrestler, it prints out. And that wrestler can then sign it as an 8x10.
Love it. It's the little things like that that endear a brand, not just a person, but a brand, a whole brand to somebody. And to be a successful brand, you do have to have the successful pieces. Everybody's got to know that. And I mean, that's the theory that the WWE has operated on for so long, and why they're such a successful company is that no one's bigger than the brand. You've seen people become bigger than the brand, and then we kind of see what happened. Now, are we going to tell how it's going to go from here on? No, but that's a multinational, big, global, massive money company. We're talking small. We're talking impactful to the community. We're talking something that it's tangible. John Bullard Promotions is tangible. Chaotic Combat Wrestling is tangible. It's something that's close. It's relatable. It's something that can endear the fans. And that's why the last impression that they get from a show, there's a saying in golf, you come back, or your last shot better be good, because that's what'll keep you coming back.
Exactly.
You might have played like garbage all day, but if you sink that 10-foot putt, even if it's for a bogey, double bogey, whatever it is, you sink it and you hear that noise, the little polyurethane ball rattling around in a plastic cup, you're like, all right, yeah, let's come back again tomorrow. That's how wrestling should be treated. That's how wrestling should feel. You leave the show, and I want to, like, the thing that I would love to hear is, when's the next one?
And that's the key importance of the last impression. Now, after the meet and greet, fans are about to walk out the door. That's when you have your tickets for the next event, like a purchase right there. You can give them a special offer, discount. Hey, you're already here, $2 off your tickets, whatever. Cool. And here's also a poster for the next event. You know, and sometimes I like to do a little special things too of having posters autographed while they leave, so they have a little souvenir. Little additional things like that actually goes a mile with a fan. Because now, while they leave, another thing I want to tell promoters: stop trying to put flyers on the chairs and on all this bleachers and stuff before an event, because 95% of the time when the show's over with, those things are still on those chairs and all over the floor. If you're wanting to get your fans' attention, meet them at the door. Do what I do. Shake their hand, thank them for coming, and when you're shaking that hand, you hand them a flyer. Get to see what they think. Another thing I also will be implementing for my shows as well too, I want to do surveys. For fans who actually turn in their survey, they get themselves a raffle ticket. That raffle ticket will be a free merch item. It might be a signed item. It might be anything. Who knows? It might be free tickets to the next event. But when we get those surveys in hand, the surveys ask, what do you like? What wrestler did you like? What do you didn't like? What would make your experience better? How can I actually go above and beyond to make sure the next time you're here, you're happy? Little things like that goes a mile with your fans.
Don't be an absent parent, essentially. If you're a promoter, it's not as yes. If you're a promoter, you can't just hit play and walk away. It's not as easy. It's not just throwing a kid a tablet. Like you have to be attentive to the thing. John, I've learned a ton. I've got a bunch of notes, both here and mentally now. Do I have plans to run a promotion? Probably not. But these are things that I feel like I can implement outside of wrestling, things I can implement not just here, but daily life. And it's not a bad thing to do. So my question is there anything that we've left out of this 7-step program?
Well, outside the 7 steps, they are little promoter 101 knowledge. There's different things that I feel like will help out young promoters or struggling promoters. One of the things I tell guys all the time, carpools can be a benefit and a blessing to you, because a lot of times talent will actually drop their price just to have their buddies travel with them. And a lot of times you can get a great group. Prime example of this, and I want to give all these guys a huge pat on the back, because they're phenomenal people. Ace Evans, better known as Sean Stockmeyer, a guy who has been a true blessing to the Michigan wrestling scene. He deserves to get his name out there more. Him, Eddie Dillon, Sean Porter, the referee, who's a phenomenal ref.
Yes. Great hand, by the way, too. Just in general.
Great human being. And the thing is, all those guys I just mentioned, and Mark Anthony, who also travels with them, they're all tremendous human beings. I booked them now as my personal crew for JPP events because they understand what we're doing as a company. They implement customer service from their own performance and also how they treat the fans. And they're there to see the company grow. You couldn't ask for a better group of guys. Same thing with the Bruisers, Robbie and Mitch, Don Tone Leon and Jay Leo are professionals. G Money, who's been traveling with them, is I think even him as a promoter too. Yep. He's a tremendous promoter for what he's doing with
yes, he is. ACIW was an absolute blast. Obviously, promotions all have kinks to work out, and there were a few of them. But I think when he came back the next show, from what I heard, fantastic. The things he had asked, he had reached out to a lot of people that were in attendance and asked, and I think that's a thing that might have been piggybacked off of yourself or Thomas. But yes, I agree with that 100%. Also, just if it's past like 9:30, don't give the Bruisers a mic.
Funny thing is, they actually worked the main event of my my last event. It was the Bruisers and Nelson Edwin Robert Doolittle V, better known as Nerd, another phenomenal talent. To me, he's a modern day Andy Kaufman. Him and the Bruisers versus Berto, Tolli, and Artano. I hope I pronounced that right. I do apologize, Mark. They had the 6-man tag that literally felt like WrestleMania 1. You know, so it was,
I'm playing it back in my head now.
So Tolli is Hulk Hogan, but her known as the Tulk, and Berto's kind of like the hillbilly Jim character. And then Mark's like pretty much like modern day Superfly, you know. So it was a phenomenal match. And the thing is, the finish, big part. Referees down. No one's there to make the count. What are we going to do? There's a power. There's a magic. One of you fans can make the day. One of you can save the day. We found 2 kids with Down syndrome. You can make this effort. You can make this change. And they got in the ring with us, make sure they were safe. And they counted to 3. And by the time that 3 came down, you heard that crowd just went bananas. What is little things. And here's the thing. After that match was over with, those kids were in the middle of the ring with all these guys. And they all got their photos taken with them. They got an experience making a 3 count. But also they got the experience of being in the ring with their heroes and seeing this larger than life characters. And we had so many families, so many parents come up to us and thanked us for giving their kids that moment. Some of these families have never seen professional wrestling live and in person. Their kids have been fans of wrestling forever on TV, but an event ticket might cost $150, $200, $300. Just get a seat. But here, our tickets are affordable. Why? Because we care about the economy. We know inflation's rough. So we try to give fans a decent ticket amount that they can afford, that mom, dad, brother, and sister, everyone can go and see it. But then you give them that little special moment. You can create the magic with us. Come out here and let's do this. And when they get to create that magic, if it goes from ringing a bell to being a guest special ring announcer to being the referee for one little count, life-changing moment. And then they get the photo. They get the photo to hold that for the rest of their lives.
So
memories.
I'm going to put you on the spot here too, because allegedly they don't just get a photo. There might be some video evidence of things that happened. Yes. And I didn't know if that was debuted to the public yet.
Actually, yes, we will be dropping the film episodes for Championship Wrestling. John Bullard presents Championship Wrestling, and yeah, they'll see what I mean by crowd interaction.
Is the trailer okay to play?
Go right ahead.
Because I do. We've talked at length about this. I won't use the word ad nauseum because we could continue to talk about it, and I'm never going to get sick about it because I love this. This is something like when people ask me, why did you get into wrestling? As a worker, I got into it because of kids, and I want to like entertain the people that obviously my life took a little bit of a turn, but John Bullard Promotions, however, has something absolutely beautiful here. And if you grew up in the same era that we did, 80s through 90s, you are absolutely going to love this. So please join us for the next minute and a half and check this video out because it's fantastic.
King of Sports Wrestling Alliance presents John Bullard Promotions Saturday morning Raffle Masters.
I love the music. I don't usually get on. I'm over here bopping because it's like I listen to that while I'm working, like the vaporwave, the 80s arcade era stuff, and I absolutely love the music. I thought the video was fantastic. I love being able to look in the background and see the crowd react. You look at the front row, the crowd, the moves. When the luchadors are spinning around and he's kind of got him in the head scissors and he's just doing that.
His Lord captures the fancy raccoon, by the way. Do that.
Yeah, they're just, the crowd is just pumping. I love it. I love it. That's wrestling.
Yes.
That's wrestling.
Yeah, that's a simple put. Sometimes, and I'll say this about a lot of things, you may not have to have the flashiest materials to make a wrestling show. Yes, presentation does matter. Presentation does go along with your fans. But if you take at least half the things I taught you today, the customer service, the structuring, the build up, to creating, and then working with your audience to give them those moments. Even when there's nothing going on in the ring, just something that you can do in return. Little simple gesture. Creates a moment and it creates a fan for life.
I agree with that 100%. John, this has been an absolutely eye-opening experience. This has been, I feel like every time I sit down and I talk with you, I say this has been one of my favorite podcasts to do. And this truly is, mostly because A, I didn't have to talk a lot of the time, but B, I feel like I learned a ton. And I feel like anybody who watches this is going to learn a massive amount. It doesn't matter whether you've been in the business forever, you're new to it, you're refreshing. This is needed. This is, we talk about seminars and a lot of people are out. I don't want to say people are money grabbing with them, but I feel like there's sometimes seminars that you're not going to learn much out of. And it's not that you can't, it's because you can learn anything out of anything, but maybe you learn the wrong things. And this is definitely not one of them. So if you're a wrestling promoter or just in the wrestling industry in general, please take a listen to this. I'm going to listen back to it. I'm going to review my notes and see, because I'm sure there's things that I missed during this, even though I've been sitting right here.
The thing is as well, too, and I actually do offer a liaison work for other promoters. So if you're a struggling promoter or you're new to the game, or even if you're a little experienced, but you just want a second set of eyes to work with you to help you out, I am able to and willing to help those companies. I do have a small fee that I ask for my time, which is very important because I'm a very, very busy man. But I do try to make time for those who are needing help and assistance and to help direct and steer those companies in the right direction. So
is that your shark repellent thing on your bat belt of your tools, or like what do we have there? Because you've got about every tool in the book when it comes to the ins and outs of the rings. It's quite frankly, I don't know how you find time to do the things that you already do and continue to add on to them.
I try to take at least 30 minutes to an hour a day out of my busy schedule to do something. If it's just to make an ad or create something for marketing, I go do that. Or if, for example, I just got hired on by bodyslam.net to write articles and cover news stories. So I'll take time out of my day to help out the independents. A big part of what I'm doing at bodyslam.net is to do coverage on the independent wrestling scene around us and to help put eyes on the up-and-coming talent that deserves it, and also to help out the promoters and the shows around that could use a little extra boost and attention. So
that's absolutely fantastic. Well, John, before we let you go, as always here on a Forklift, we want to make sure that you can talk about anything that you have coming up. So whatever's coming up for John Bullard Promotions, if you have news for Chaotic Combat, if you have news for Big Japan Wrestling, anything is available. And I'm going to give you the big screen here.
Well, there's a few things coming up. Let me go get my phone here real quick because that's where all my calendar is at.
No, be my guest.
I will definitely give a shout out to Ruthless Pro Wrestling. They got that huge WrestleMania event on Sunday, April 7th. Miasma, as it's going to be known as, over at the H2O Performance Center. That's going to be aired on IWTV. Give them a following. Check them out. They do a fantastic job if you're into that style of wrestling. My next personal appearance will be for Squared Circle Megastars in Berlin. We actually have Battlefront. That's their next event. It's going to be Saturday, May 18th. As a all-star lineup. Check them out. Squirt Circle Megastars. Follow them on Facebook. They're also on Twitter and Instagram as well too. So that's going on. But for myself personally, outside of some of my commentary gigs coming up with Bleeding Gums Wrestling in Scotland, I'll also be running multiple events in the month of June. June's going to be very, very busy for me. June 2nd on Sunday, Chaotic Combat Wrestling has their huge debut event. It's going to be in LaPorte, Indiana at the Pine Lake Resort and Banquets. It is the way of the Ronin, the Ronin's way. We're going to have an amazing matchups. We're going to have some first-time matchups, and we're also going to crown the Underground champion. On top of that, for John Bullard Promotions, a more family-friendly show, June 8th, we'll actually be making our debut at the wonderful theme park, Indiana Beach Resort Theme Park, Water Park, there at the legendary Indiana Beach Ballroom. We're going to have 5 big matches. We're going to have entertaining talent. It's going to be there working with us. And then on June 22nd, we're going to be involved with the Midwest Gore Fest coming up at the legendary Logan Square Auditorium. So be there. We got FMW star Chainsaw Tony and a all-star lineup, including ECW original Joel Gertner.
Absolutely fantastic. And it's great to hear that you are going to be so busy and people have so many opportunities to come out to things that are produced by you and yourself. Not just to piggyback on one thing, the Miasma show. This show here is being released on It's being released on Wednesday, so you might be able to listen to this show while I'm recording an interview with your counterpart, color commentator for Ruthless Pro Wrestling. Peapod is joining me to do a Miasma pre-show and just a little bit of a deep dive into, Chris and his experience into the wrestling industry as well.
One of the best commentators in the business. I'm a huge. He's my commentary partner and. At Ruthless Pro Wrestling. We also do SLC Punk Wars, the SLC Wars over in Salt Lake City, Utah. Me and Peapod's been signed on to do commentary for their shows. It's fun. He's a blast to work with. He's an ultra professional. Usually I'm the guy who takes notes, but ever since I worked with him, I don't have to worry about anything. It's like, okay, I don't know who this is. Peapod has all that knowledge. He has all these notes printed out for everybody. He's like one of the top 5 most professional commentators I've ever worked with. He's phenomenal. That should be a great podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This podcast will, like I said, this will be released on Wednesday, 3/27. Obviously, you'll know that if you're listening to it on that day. And the Peapod podcast will be the P-Podcast. I don't like that one. The Peapod podcast. Let's not use that phrase. That will be released on Friday, which is going to be 3/29. So we want to get everything out before Miasma. Mania weekend for Ruthless Pro Wrestling's got a big time for it. I'm sure you're excited about that. And to be able to do the commentary for that. Are you doing commentary for that? Are you going to be out there? Or are you doing...
So I won't actually be at that event for the first time ever. I want to miss out on a RPW event. Family, I want to say family crisis by no means, but it's more of a family situation. My wife, of course, we're about to have our first child this year. I'm kind of keeping a little bit more closer to home just to watch over her to make sure everything's okay. 100%. But I will be at all the Ruthless Pro events. I will be at the Michigan show for King of the Kill. And also will be there for their Chicago events and the other events in the area. So I'll be with them.
Awesome. Well, once again, this has been Pro Wrestling's Swiss Army Knife, John Bullard. I am the Hoochie Daddy, Ethan James. This has been On a Forklift. You can find us at On a Forklift or On a Forklift Pod on Twitter. It's the only thing I'll dead name. I still had your other one in here too. I messed up. Anyway, yeah. Hey. Good enough. Let me take this thing down off of here. Who cares? We're on YouTube. They're watching it on YouTube. It's the only place you can find it at. They know where to find us. John, once again, I cannot stress enough. Thank you so much for sitting down with me, especially on this absolutely lovely evening. I apologize about that. I know your background there still has bright sunshiny times. Maybe you're able to get another little walk in here around your neighborhood. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
But I appreciate it. Thank you again, sir. This has been enlightening. And as always, I cannot wait until the next time I'm able to sit down with you and hopefully talk about a chaotic combat, preview or a recap.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Once again, this has been on a Forklift Wrestling Podcast. And as always, we love you, Judy.